Tottenham's transfer window has been up and down, erratic, unpredictable, turbulent. After gaining Mathys Tel, Kevin Danso, Mohammed Kudus, Joao Palhinha, but suffering defeats on a few key targets. The Lilywhites rip open a fresh page, that fresh page encompassing the young, brilliant Brazilian Savinho. Now, when this news was broken, I was pretty shocked. I didn't know that this was a possibility. Pep Guardiola, his staff, the coaches, Manchester City are hugely enthusiastic about Savinho, and it was not within their plans to be selling the young man this summer. But with Manchester City looking for a fee well above the 50 million mark, it seems very appealing to the citizens with recent buys, finances, squad building, and the fact they'd be making huge profit on what they brought him for. It again sounds very enticing for the Manchester club. We'll swing into my verdict later, but let's get analysing the player. Savinho is predominantly a right-hand sided player, but is capable of excelling on either flank, actually featuring one more game on the left in his career than the right. The Brazilian enjoys using his left foot to cut inside, but shares comfortability in going either way. Let's explore that. On the ball, there's been various moments with Savinho where he chops inside on that stronger left foot 1v1, but he commonly slows the play down, maintaining control of the ball with his left foot, before he executes a sudden burst forward onto his right foot, aiming to cross, asserting unpredictability to him with the ball. Savinho can be so intense within this, giving a defender a real headache. It's always important for wingers to be capable on either foot, but Savinho is capable with either foot, but includes tricky footwork, fast change of direction, speedy ball carrying, and creative qualities on top of that as well. When Savinho cuts inside, he's very effective moving into that favourable right half space, where he can move closer to goal and his teammates. Creatively, he can pass inside and out with nice precision and weight onto his passes, whether that's to form a quick link-up play, find an underlapping run, a runner in behind like his assist versus Arsenal, but where he impresses even more is his danger when crossing. He creates the space for himself superbly by beating his man quite oftenly, gifting the Brazilian more time to pick out a cross by bursting a yard ahead of his man. He's capable of crossing with both feet, but for most instances it's either of these two. 1. Beat his fullback with direction, skill, speed, then distributes a looped but more slowly struck cross that's hit whilst leaning back a tad, suitable for any target forward or late box crasher. And then 2, look for the yard of space, then strike the ball low, across the goal or as a cutback. Both vary with the distance between him and the crossing target. But just because these are two very common moves for him, it doesn't mean he depends on space to thrive in. Savinho does thrive off space to drive into. In fact, Savinho is ridiculously good ball carrier from deep, as we can see statistically here, ranking very high for progressive carries per 90 with 6.61, the 8th most in the league last season. The 21-year-old is capable of picking the ball up deep near City's penalty box and taking it to the opponent's penalty box single-handedly. But at Manchester City, Savinho was tested with operating against teams with more men behind the ball, more congested spaces, which actually showed off both his creative and 1v1 excellence, where he could retain the ball versus opponents, multiple opponents, and also create for his side. This makes the youngster extremely dangerous in the opponent's box, being equipped to take on open and tighter spaces, thanks to his talented footwork, speed, swift change of direction, bringing uncertainty to opponents looking to stop him, leading to penalties and a lot of fouls drawn. Touching on that speed too, the young man can be a real hustler off the ball, closing down his man with sheer speed in the press, forcing mistakes and very sudden rushed actions, where his off the ball duties translate to tracking back too. However, the biggest question mark for the young man's game is his output. Just 1 goal last season in the Premier League, and an honest explanation to that slightly comes down to how raw he is and him being slightly oblivious to where he's actually shooting. Savinho struggles to find the corners of the goal, evidenced by his shot map. I find he lacks decisiveness, any clinical or ruthless edge to the final third. Yes, because he's young, often doing everything right before the final action suggests that, but sometimes he's too consumed and focused on the ball when close to goal. Instead, he should be looking where he could guide the ball, the corners, past the goalkeeper. Instead, a lot of shots are actually quite easy for the goalkeeper to get to, for as long as they make themselves big. This could be a long-standing weakness to his career, but one that can be worked on with coaching and experience. So now we know about Savinho a little bit more in detail, how does this combine with Tottenham? So here we can see a Tottenham Hotspur 11 with Savinho within the mix. And at first I didn't really understand this signing, the news breaking. It didn't make a lot of sense to me, but it's not off-brand for thomasfrank to want a very direct, creative but technical winger. It makes a lot of sense because Savinho is quite flexible within his approach play. He can be creative against tighter congested spaces, but he can also run into open space, just like Bryan Mbeumo at Brentford. And I think the big words amongst all of this to take away from what thomasfrank wants in his wingers is direct and creative. Now of course Tottenham have a lot of flexibility here. You have Odegaard, you have Brennan Johnson, you have Kulusevski. I'm pretty sure there's somebody else I'm missing as well, Mathys Tel obviously there. But this gives him different options within his wing play. And I think the very interesting thing about all of this is there's a lot of ball to feet players, but amongst all of this you do have players who can run in behind, such as Pedro running into that space, such as Mathys Tel, such as Brennan Johnson, Wilson Odegaard, Savinho. So it is a very interesting approach play from Tottenham in the transfer market. If we compare Savinho statistically versus Kulusevski and Brennan Johnson, I think it's pretty clear what Savinho brings. I think he delivers something a little bit more direct and creative, differing from the likes of Brennan Johnson, Mathys Tel, even Kulusevski to a slight, as you can see through shot creating actions, key passes, crosses, dribbles, progressive carries. Of course, it's important to note that Savinho plays in a Manchester City side with more possession, but I think it quite clearly shows what Tottenham are looking for when you look within the data of what Savinho brings. And I think this leans more into Mohammed Kudus being the number 10, which is very, very interesting to me because I don't like the idea of thomasfrank having to compromise with his number 10. He really wanted Morgan Gibbs-White. That was quite clear. He wanted somebody very consistent there, somebody who could drop within the deep build-up play, but also affect the game in and around here and be creative. And Kudus has played all of pre-season on the right-hand side. So if this is a compromise, I am slightly disappointed. I just hope they go and get somebody like eberechi, Bilal El-Chenous or Harvey Elliott within the 10 as well. Now if we just have a look at Tottenham Hotspur within the build-up play, as you can see here, this is the shape, this is the sort of starting 11 that you'd expect with Savinho, who can also play on the left as well, having Kudus or Brennan Johnson on the right, whatever you want. But I think what this brings here is a sudden burst to that next phase of play. Savinho can get the ball wherever by dropping in and then create space for Kudus, but create space for Pedro as well, bombing up as he should be. It's one of his best qualities, but with Savinho, it's that sudden burst, it's that sudden breakaway from a player which really releases Tottenham within the next phase of play. It's using possession to attack, not to stall, not to pass the ball around, and I think that just speeds up the process a whole lot more. And I think with the dynamic of having so many players wanting their ball to the feet, such as Savinho, Kudus, even Pedro to a slight, Mathys Tel, Kulusevski, James Maddison, who of course is injured, I don't think this should be a huge concern because you have Mathys Tel who can do this, Pedro who can do this, Savinho, even Kudus, as he's a very powerful ball carrier. So I think there is good flexibility here. You just don't want everybody coming in deep wanting the ball. You don't want everybody moving into the same spaces and getting in the way for each other. You need some players who are going to create the space for himself for their runs. With Savinho dropping in deep in and around here, it does create that combination play with Mohammed Kudus, and that does seem very promising to me because the two can rotate very easily within each other, but they can create space for each other really well. Savinho picking up the ball, bringing it into Kudus, creating space for Porro to make the run. There is a lot of solutions, which also brings slight wide overload as well, which will be very exciting when we enter the final third. Now, that final third is probably the most exciting prospect for me. So if we take a look at Spurs within this, as you can see, we've got Savinho, we've got Pedro Porro, and this for me, the potential for 2v1s, for the two of them to be working together is just absolutely brilliant. And I'd be very excited for a Spurs fan if they get to watch this every week. Because Savinho at Manchester City was only really supported with underlapping runs, which as we've seen, he's able to find. But he was never really supported with somebody like Pedro Porro on the outside of that. So for me, that is such an exciting prospect for Savinho to 2v1, because as a defender, you don't know what he's going to do. You have Pedro Porro, one of the best high-flying fullbacks within the league, within world football when he gets forward. So there's a potential for him to pass on the outside, but also for you to get completely distracted and bring Savinho into the game within his best spaces, entering that right half space. But with this, it's very easy for Spurs to create very fluid wide overloads. If we look at it here, you have Porro, you have Savinho, and you have Pape Sarr. The easy progression here is quite clear to see. It's going to be so easy for Spurs to progress down this side. It's going to be so natural because Savinho, as we've seen, a progressive monster within his ball carrying, within his passing. Pedro Porro within his ball carrying. Sarr within his passing. So it's going to be so fluid to see because all three of them can rotate very easily. Savinho can excel within here, but also out there. Porro can make inside runs, which can be so effective. So it's going to be so unpredictable for a defence to even try and anticipate. And then you can have Kudus dropping in with here as well. So it's just crazy. And this would be deadly for opponents to deal with. I think this further allows Savinho to get within his best spaces, which is closer to goal, closer to teammates within this right half space in and around here. I think it's important that Savinho isn't so wide, that he isn't utilised as this just purely wide threat, as a wide man, as a touchline winger. It's important he gets within these spaces because he can create, he can score, and he can just create havoc for teammates. But one of the best things about this is that if you're playing against a low block, let's say it's 5 at the back, let's say it's a really tricky shape and everybody's behind the ball, I think Spurs have the tools to break this down. You've got the crossing and creativity of Savinho and Porro within this side. You've also got Mohammed Kudus, who can shoot, who can create chaos on the edge of the box, but also run through, just like Savinho. You've got Solanke, a target man within the box. You've got a back post run of Mathys Tel or Brennan Johnson, which could be so effective. That's not something I've spoken about as much. And you can even push a doggy up as well, just having these three stay back, which just creates so much potential for Spurs to be so deadly against any type of team. But those fast transitions between Porro and Savinho running into large amounts of space could be so deadly, because Spurs will be coming up against deep blocks, against very tight defensive, such as your Crystal Palaces and the newly promoted teams, but they're also going to be coming up against open space, against the bigger teams, against your Brightons that are going to be looking to attack you more. So this is so promising from a Tottenham perspective. And then one of the best things about all of this is that he doesn't jeopardise you off the ball. Savinho can be deadly off the ball. He's a very, very fast presser, but he's also disciplined within his position, matching Thomasfrank's 4-4-2 press. And if we have a look at the opposition playing out from the back, and if we just bring everybody back a tad, then Savinho is brilliant within this phase as well, because he can suffocate an opponent within the press, make life really, really difficult for opponents to play out, purely because he is so fast. I mean, you've seen it with the goal against Ipswich. He pressed down the goalkeeper and he couldn't do anything. So Savinho against an opponent here could be deadly. As soon as they get the ball, bang, bang, Savinho's there, and this adds once again to the physicality and pace within the front line, which I talk about so much. I really do think thomasfrank's team is going to be deadly within the counter press too, which is something I've not spoken about as much, but it is, oh, let's go back to the screen, but it's a fundamental to thomasfrank's game that is so important. I mean, teams trying to play out here and Palhinha absolutely clamps you, bang, that could be 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, depending on the game state. But within the counter press as well, I talk about this a lot, and although it doesn't seem as important to some people, the counter press, it's just like, okay, cool. But it's the act of pinning a team back in. And that's one of the biggest things against a deeper and more tighter defence as well, which can unlock it. Because if you're pinning them back and just bringing relentless pressure, then you are going to score at some point. So if you have all of these players up within here and just completely pinning them back, if they're trying to escape this counter press, then chances are there's going to be space for them to run into. But my honest verdict for the signing is that this would be a fantastic one for as long as they get a number 10. As I said, depending on eberechi, Kudus or Harvey Elliott, I just think they need one. Harvey Elliott would certainly be interesting, considering they lack left footers with just Kudus and Kulusevski within these areas as well. So I really want to see a number 10, but I also would love to see Savinho. I think he brings the best out of other players as well, and honestly, what's there not to like about the signing? The 21-year-old from Manchester City is a huge market opportunity. Never judge City players after just one season, especially talented ones like Savinho. Thank you guys for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, make sure to smash a like and subscribe to the channel. What do you think of the potential signing of Savinho? Do you think Spurs should be looking at somewhere else, prioritising Eberechi? Or do you think Spurs should be going ahead and getting their man? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.